Most artists probably know the struggle of wanting to draw but being unable to, not because something is directly stopping you from drawing, but because of this weird mental hurdle you can't get over. I've had different phases throughout my art journey, during some of which I almost couldn't believe people got Artblock, but circumstances change and I've been having pretty frequent struggles with Artblock, burnout and perfectionism going on for over a year. 2025 so far was literally the year with the least artworks made by me. However, the dry spell was broken by a recent art event you might have heard of. So let me tell you about my experience and what you can learn from this even without the event to deal with your art block and perfectionism. Okay, let me quickly explain what I mean with art block and perfectionism. Art block is a feeling or a mental state where you can't get yourself to work on something, or it is much harder, takes more energy and time than usual. This can apply to any kind of art really. Drawing, writing, composing a song, pretty much anything creative. Typically, people will feel frustrated or a bit depressed from experiencing art block, because it feels like it should be easy, but it's just hard for some reason. This can lead to blaming oneself, avoiding to work on your projects, and calling yourself lazy, which we will talk about a bit more later. Perfectionism is something that can contribute to art block. It's essentially the need to make everything you do or everything you do in a specific job, hobby or activity as good as possible. Oftentimes these expectations can be unrealistic, unachievable or only achievable with a ton of work and effort put in. Perfectionism also doesn't depend on your skill level. You can be a beginner and be a perfectionist because you always feel the need to do better and you're never satisfied with anything you make. Or you can be a very skilled artist who many other artists admire and still feel like you need to do better or that your work isn't good enough yet. I would say perfectionism isn't inherently bad, because at least for me, it has also been a guide on where I can improve. It does become harmful when you are never happy with your art, and it leads you to struggle, get mad at yourself, insult yourself, procrastinate working on your art, and eventually makes you hate it entirely. For example, perfectionism can help to push an artwork past your current skill level with the help of references and spending extra time on rendering, but if you start to expect that level of detail on every artwork you have, to push yourself to make something better and better every time, that is not gonna be sustainable. Your regular art process should be fun or relaxing, not anxiety or freeze response inducing. So recently I've been really struggling to draw. I had just been through a year of a lot of my art being specifically made for YouTube videos, like character designs and so on, which can feel pretty restrictive, but at the same time a lot of those videos did really well, and since my videos are how I earn money and reach potential commissioners, I am kinda dependent on making more. But also the specific art I was making, aka character designs, was really draining. Making several 10 to 20 hour designs for one video meant that I basically couldn't draw anything else during that time frame. But even when I technically had time to make art that wasn't meant for videos, it still felt like it had to be something important. I also have these weird phases where I feel bad if I don't make an exceptionally epic drawing like this one within the past couple months. And then when I do attempt to make one of those, I pressure myself extremely hard to get it to be perfect. I push my skills to the limit, which is good to do sometimes, but not to the extent where you don't want to draw anymore. So yeah, I was in a place where my art had to be perfect, made for content or serve some kind of specific purpose like for OC lore, and if you know anything about creativity, it doesn't really function when you force it into a tiny little box with lots of pressure and restrictions. The art event and what helped me. You guys probably already figured out that I'm talking about Artfight again, since the event just ended and I'm literally using some of the drawings I made for it as footage. But this video isn't about Artfight itself, just about my experience with it helping me deal with art block and perfectionism. So you don't really need to know much about how it works. The basics are that you can draw other people's characters to earn points and other people can draw your characters. The event only happens in July and afterwards you can't submit any more drawings. That's the most bare bones explanation I can give, but if you guys want to learn more about the event, I do have a video on it in case you're interested. Now let me explain what about it helped me get out of art block and how you can use that outside of Artfight as well. Lowering the pressure / expectations. So this year for the event, I decided I would only draw characters I vibe with or that I have a fun idea for. I would not spend too much time on each drawing and only render it in a way where I didn't have to push myself a lot. That also meant that I would stick with mostly busts or half bodies, since drawing extra limbs like legs would take more time. And I also didn't aim for backgrounds unless I had a cool idea that wouldn't be too difficult to execute. For the first drawing, I felt pretty rusty to be honest, especially with the line art, which is not surprising given that I haven't been drawing that much before the event. But the fact that I knew I didn't have to give 120% for this drawing and kind of just half-ass it made me feel way more calm about it. I think I may have mentioned this before, but I heard a saying somewhere that I keep thinking about. A lot of skilled perfectionists will try to put literally as much effort into a drawing as possible because they think that it won't be good enough. But at a certain point, your skill level is high enough where your half-assed art just looks like most people's full-ass art. I feel like this very much applies to me. But yeah, I also really liked the way the expression of the drawing looked, so I was motivated to keep going. I ended up finishing it in like 2.5 hours, which is pretty dang fast. Changing your process slightly. So sometimes with Artblock, the advice is to completely try out a different process. And I don't know about you, but that usually gives me more anxiety and stress because the results tend to look weird and it's not what I was aiming for. That was very much the case for this drawing here. I wanted to draw these two characters together because they looked cool, but because I wanted to show off their outfits, that meant I needed to draw two half-body characters in somewhat complicated clothing, which would take time. So I decided to not properly line it and instead use the sketch as line art. However, that meant I couldn't use the color fill tool in Procreate, and I overall probably would have taken about the same time if I had lined it. I also did a kind of weird soft shading, which doesn't look bad, but I also don't love it. I drew some flowers and the background was yeeted together with plant brushes. Now to the example of how I changed my process slightly to where it was a bit easier on me. Basically, a lot of the time I have a billion layers because for each flat color layer, I will use multiple layers for shading instead of putting one blend mode layer on top of everything. I still did this to an extent here, but the yellow light was all on one layer. I also opted not to line the wings and tail since they weren't in focus to save more time. From there on out, I kept this in mind for the following drawings. This one I had a lot of fun with. First of all, it's an edgy man character with an edgy man expression, which I love to draw. Big grins are so fun to draw, you guys, you don't even understand. By the way, I have an expression tutorial in the making. It should come out a month after this video if you'd like to learn how I make my expressions believable. But yeah, on this guy, I also kinda just bullshitted the anatomy. I should have gone and gotten a ref for the armpit, but I just did it from memory and decided not to bother. Sometimes it's small things like this that keep you sane. Also, his head under the line art is literally bald because the hair is drawn on top and behind of the head. This was honestly such a good idea because especially long hair can take ages to line, and since he has dark hair you pretty much wouldn't even see the line art anyways. But since this drawing was looking really cool, I kinda wanted to have a background and decided to go for a concert stage because he is in a metal band. Now, I said earlier I wouldn't do backgrounds, but in this case I felt chill about it and just experimented around to make it as easy for myself as possible. I added these colorful stage lights, another member from the band, and a crowd behind them. It may look impressive at first glance, but it's actually very simple. It ended up taking 4 hours, which is a very acceptable amount for this quality of drawing. The hair method I loved so much that I ended up using it in the next two drawings as well. I swear to God, I am never gonna line long hair again. I hated it so much. Don't commit to overambitious projects all the time. While doing Artfight, I listened to a song that worked so well for one of my OCs and the OCs my friends made for her that I got an animatic daydream in my head. You know, like when you listen to a song and you imagine your OCs animated to the song. Yeah, that. And since it had other OCs than mine, I could have used it for an Artfight attack. At first I was super motivated and hyped to do it, but the hype quickly died down once I got to actually doing it. I asked myself if it was a good idea to do this right now, or if I would just end up being super stressed about finishing it. And so, I put it to the side. I still got an interesting drawing idea out of it, so I may work on it another time. So sometimes when you know it isn't the right time for it, it's best to not give in to your inner gremlin screaming at you to make this animatic. Maybe just make one drawing of a scene that really stuck with you from that daydream. Next up is this attack from my friends and how I simplified things to save time. Their OCs have really cool detailed outfits, but man, I did not have the time, energy or motivation to draw these right now, so I decided they would just be naked. Ize, the big mommy, also has ear jewelry that probably would have killed me if I tried to draw it with line art, so I just slapped it on in one layer on top. No line art needed. Simplifying could also be to draw the characters in a simpler outfit or to take away some of the details in their outfit to make it easier for you. With your own characters, you can obviously do whatever you want, but with someone else's characters, you should make sure they're okay with it. Artfight luckily has character permissions that are easy to check. Also, I was a bit tempted to make a hair shampoo ad out of this, so yeah, I have this. Intervention. Okay, I'm gonna talk about my Artfight experience this year for a second, so if you're just here for the Artblock tips, feel free to skip this section. This year was kind of crazy. I got so many attacks, it was actually insane. I think I got like 20 attacks per day in the first week, and I really wanted to reply to everyone, so I spent probably at least 8 hours in total responding to all of your drawings. I now understand why some bigger artists don't comment on Artfight. But yeah, last year I tried to show off the attacks that I got in 2 videos, where I also talked about my attacks, but this year the video doesn't match that super well, and there's also just too many attacks. So I'm just gonna show the thumbnails and the names because I still wanted you guys to be included in this video without it taking me 5 billion hours to import every single file with credits into the video. So even though I already thanked all of you guys in the comments, thank you again. You guys rock. Thank you for drawing my babies. The next 2 characters are both from art YouTubers you guys have probably seen. Lucky Inkyo and June Jinja Ninja, or actually Rhea. Both of them are very cool artists, and Lucky is actually the #1 simp of my OC Aster. I just need to mention this every single time. Anyways, I decided to draw their OCs together because of the colors, to be honest. It just seemed like they would look cool AF together. Tell me they don't look like they are magical boy-girl characters, you would be so wrong. Anyways, I didn't line the hair or the golden lines again to save time, and I shaded most of the clothing with just 1 multiply layer. I think the main exceptions are the hair, but yeah, this drawing slays. Embracing the Scuff. The next drawing I did was also for another friend, and I noticed during the sketch phase that it wasn't really going super well. Like, it wasn't looking bad, but since the drawing's focus is so much on the face not being as good as the rest of the drawings wasn't ideal. So I had to pick between completely overhauling the sketch or just going with it and embracing that the drawing probably wouldn't end up being up to my standards in terms of the face specifically. Now, I usually would not settle for the second option, but because Artfight was ending in a week and I had another video to work on, I decided to not stress myself more and just went with the sketch I had. I think the drawing and specifically the coloring and shading looks good. It's just the face itself that bothers me a little bit. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta accept that not every drawing will be up to your standards. Especially if you're a perfectionist. And even though you don't like it that much, the drawing can still look good overall and especially to other people. Routine. Another thing about Artfight that helped me was that it got me back into the routine of drawing almost every day. And because I wasn't pushing myself so hard, it was actually enjoyable and I looked forward to doing it. When I get into habits, I typically tend to do them around the same time every day, so once I had breakfast, I would mostly go draw right after. It's a nice activity to start off my day, isn't too hard if I don't set my goals too high, is fun and also productive. I'm gonna try my best to stick to this routine again, even when I don't have commissions to work on, which will be a bit different since I will very likely draw my own OCs more, and for some reason that is harder for me. Actually, not for some reason, there's very much a reason why, and that's my next point. A lot of the time, drawing my own OCs comes with the pressure of having to make it extra cool, extra epic, etc. But at the same time, it feels like I can't do that much because I don't want to spoiler people. But like, I can't really spoiler anyone because there literally isn't the comic or anything about it that exists right now. I'm sure some of you guys can relate to this. So the art event where the point is to draw other people's characters was refreshing in that regard. Especially because it comes with the bonus of them being super happy that you drew their OCs. However, I think learning how to not pressure yourself to make your own OC drawing special or impactful all the time is also important, and I will have to learn that too. How to not deal with art block/perfectionism. Unfortunately, a lot of us got taught by society that mistakes are shameful and that we are only worth something if we work hard and the end product is amazing. We also may be taught that the response to correct mistakes is punishment, which is kind of just abuse, to be honest. But we internalize the experience of being punished, so sadly what many of us do when we draw something or write something and it doesn't turn out the way we want, instead of taking a step back and assessing what went wrong, we get upset blame ourselves and feel like a failure. And then when we don't want to draw anymore because we're making ourselves feel miserable for mistakes other people might not even notice, we call ourselves lazy. Hot take, but laziness almost never applies to anyone in most situations in my opinion. It's mostly used to make people feel bad about not being productive in a monetary way. If you don't feel like doing something, there's very likely a reason for it, even if you aren't aware of it. I literally had phases where I felt so exhausted even after I just woke up and felt really bad for not working on things, but also I was totally unaware of the fact that my body was constantly running on anxiety and I had 5 billion thoughts in my head at once all the time. It also never helps to insult yourself, that will literally just make you feel worse. Instead, try to treat yourself like you would treat someone you love, like a close friend. And if you don't have much experience with that, treat yourself like you imagine close, loving friends would treat each other. I think this is also a good point to note that mental health issues can definitely play a role with Artblock, so if you have access to therapy, try to make use of it. And if you don't, talking to someone you genuinely trust can also help. Getting inspired by watching artists draw. Another tip that could help if you feel like your art block comes from being stuck or bored is to just watch videos of people drawing. I don't know why I don't do this more often, but pretty much anytime I watch an artist whose art I love draw, I will want to draw as well. Same thing applies to art tutorial videos. You click out of them out of boredom and sometimes you just want to try it out right after. So you know, just saying, I have a bunch of videos on my channel where you can watch my process. In this video, I designed some of my OCs and in this one I explain how I cell shade, which is the technique I used for most of the Artfight drawings I made. Alright, if you found this video helpful, leave a like and share it with an art friend. Thanks to everyone who attacked me, there were way too many of you, my god. And special thanks to my Patreons. Will out.